Science in Action. Science in Action is produced by the West's oldest scientific institution, the California Academy of Sciences, now in its 100th year.
Thank you. You know, it's a small world. Well, that's an expression that many of us have used at various times, but really the world isn't so small after all. About, let's see, 57 million square miles. But there was a time many years ago when the world was much smaller insofar as the land area was concerned, because then we had a giant ice cap which covered much of the northern hemisphere. About 28% of the land area was covered by ice. Now, gradually that disappeared until at the present time we have about 10% of our land area which is covered by ice, as we see here. Now, 2/3 of the ice is gone. The only clues that we have as to the way in which this ice has worked is to be found in the study of the living glaciers of today. And so to tell us of these rivers of ice, we have invited as our special guest on Science in Action the famed glacier priest who comes to us from the Department of Geology at Santa Clara University, California, Father Bernard Hubbard. Welcome to Science in Action, Father Hubbard.
Thank you, Dr. Harold. Ice is a very cold subject, but I find glaciers among the most fascinating things on Earth.
You know, this is about as close as I've ever been to a glacier. You know, it sort of has a river effect or a flowing effect.
Yes, in more ways than one, Doctor. That's the Great Gapach Glacier that I first studied in the Alps, and it is a real river of ice. Ice really follows practically all the laws of gravity that a river does, only it's slower.
What are the three types that we have now? We have the Piedmont and the valley types?
Yes, now this is the valley type here, and just imagine that it gets out to the foot of the mountain and it spreads out. That's why it's called a Piedmont glacier then, Pez and Mons, foot of the mountain. That's the second type, and then the third type we don't show here. It's really an ice cap.
I see.
In Greenland and Antarctic, those are the biggest ones today, and then we have lesser ones in Spitsbergen and Nova Zembla, Alaska, Baffinland, and so on. Those are just huge areas that are flooded with ice, so to speak. And here and there, out of the ice, come strange rock-like prominences called nunataks.
Nunataks, that would be a good word to remember. Let's see, these prominences then that come out of the ice are the nunataks.
Yes, Doctor, and they're just simply lifeless rock that comes up 2,000 and 3,000 feet sometimes.
Well, now, if we started our study of the glacier with such things as ice crystals, they'd look something like this.
Yes,
snowflakes.
Yes, the beautiful little crystals that we're accustomed to see, and they're beautiful hexagonals, that's the beginning of the glacier. Because when ice falls above snow line, and you know, snow line is actually the line above which ice is, you find snow all year round. In the equator, it's way up in the highest mountains. At the poles, it's almost down at sea level. But that's where this movement of ice then begins to form what we call a glacier.
Well, then eventually, of course, it packs down until you have the flow started, and then, of course, small boys know about such things as snowballs.
Well, that's our snowball, Carl, and actually, when a youngster goes through the process of making a snowball, he goes through all the processes nature does making a glacier. Because actually these snow crystals, they come together and alternate melting and freezing together with their own pressure soon make a sort of a mass, something like frozen sludge, and then that starts in to just pour itself around whatever area it happens to be in.
Suppose we make a synthetic glacier with this river cut gorge, and we'll add our glacier material at the top here, and we'll watch it now as it flows down. Now this would be approximately, would it, what we would have?
Very much so, Carl. You see, this V-shaped valley represents terrain before a glacier or an ice cap has started to cover it. And then pretty soon, when this accumulation of snow comes to the condition where it starts moving, then the glacier is born, and it starts coursing down through this V-shaped mountain.
Well, suppose I add some color material right here, put it in a straight line, and we'll see the rate of speed with which it moves. Let's see, the center is moving out a little bit faster.
Yes, you notice that right away. That's why this is a very good example. There are two reasons for that, Carl. First of all, the center is much higher in mass than the sides, and that allows it to sort of have a forward thrust.
Yes.
And then the reason it's hardly moving at all on the sides here is because there is a sort of a frictional drag where you have the containing mountain sides that are just simply pressed against the glacier. That always allows the center to move faster.
Yes, and I suppose you'd have these small glaciers here and the various side places running into the main glacier there.
Yes, because presumably we just simply have a whole ice cap that's forming here, and they carve out the little cirques, and they knock off the depressions, and for that matter, they're always changing topography.
Well, suppose we look at a real glacier, as you have visited these many times, and see what it would look like as we watched it in motion. This would be what now? This is
right there, we're looking at the beautiful Mount McKinley, and the Muldrow Glacier is coming at us. That's about 90 miles long, and it constitutes one of the longer glaciers in the whole world. You see, literally, there are thousands of these smaller glaciers scattered around the world, the Himalayas, the Alps, Alaska, and elsewhere. They're just as you see here, huge bodies of ice that are really moving.
Well, now, what would be the rate of speed of that?
Well, that'd be hard to judge because there's so many variables. But actually, every glacier moves from a few inches to a few feet a day. We seem to be the only things moving in the plain there. Yeah. But all this whole mass here is moving, and some glaciers, in fact, in Greenland, they go around 30 or 40 or even 50 feet a day on account of the pitch and the weight on them.
How many glaciers would you estimate there are in the world?
Oh, they go up into so many thousands, I don't think they've ever even been counted. They're generally, they keep on going until they come down to levels where temperature offsets further advance. And then they either start rivers, or if they come into seas or lakes, they break off into icebergs.
Well, now, we started with this first model and the very sharp sides, and then as the glacier moves through, it chews out material, and eventually we end up with something like this.
Yes, there's the typical U-shaped trough that is very characteristic of glacier action.
That is, this U would be right down here.
Yeah, and practically all the way along with steep sides, particularly as you notice there. And here you have your mountains rounded off. Everything has been smoothed and rounded off. All the projecting ridges of the first table have now been smoothed, which is the erosive effect of glacier ice.
Well, now, as that glacier moved down the valley, of course, it picked up things such as this, and part of that scouring action, I gather, is due to this rough surface here.
That and particularly weight. Just like if you drop a hunk of soap in the sand, it gets all covered with sand, and then let it dry, and then try to wash your hands, and you'll have the same effect that a glacier has. Striations and just about everything that you don't want.
Well, now, these look as though they might have come from a stream bed, but I gather that's not the case.
In this particular case, they could have come from a stream bed, but actually this one came from the Mendenhall Glacier moraine, and this beautiful stone here, notice how polished and round it is, and it's rather heavy.
Yes.
Well, actually, that was under this tremendous weight of thousands of tons of ice, and it just couldn't move up or anything, so it was just moved around and around, scouring a sort of a glacier mill in the bedrock until finally we had this result.
Well, now, one of the results of this glacier moving down is to make these scratch marks, and I see some tremendous scratch marks here. Is that your jackknife that I see there in the middle of that one?
Yes, that gives you a little comparison in size, Earl. And those scratches simply indicate here that when the ice passed over that, it had some rocks in suspension in the ice that were harder than the bedrock, so they scratched. Otherwise, if they were softer, you'd find that they'd simply pulverize themselves up into a sort of a dust, which would be carried away from the glacier in streams.
Now, in the central part of the United States, I know we have some peculiar structures, sort of hummocks, and they are very, very interesting. Perhaps you give us an idea with this model here, just what's involved in those.
Yes, those hummocks we just were looking at were taken again in Alaska. They call them in the Alps roche mouton, or sheep's backs.
Yes.
And here's the way they occur. You find some kind of an elevation in bedrock. The glacier comes to that, and instead of diverting around it, being rigid like ice, it begins to climb over it, and then the buffing action makes everything rounded off. And then with a little imagination, when you see a whole lot of them together, they give the impression of sheep's backs. That's where they got the name.
Well, you glacial geologists have some special words, and one of them that we quite often see is this word moraine. So I'd like to point out just how that is spelled, and perhaps with this glaciated valley now, you can give us an idea as to what a moraine is. With these small pebbles here?
Well, first of all, the substance of moraines are merely the rocks that have been chipped off from the sides of the containing rock mountains, let's say. Now, a glacier's action is very much like a conveyor belt with rocks on it. So when it goes along, let's say it stops here. All right, the conveyor belt still pulls the rocks along, and a whole lot of it gathers up. Then let's say a recessional period comes, the glacier moves back. It scatters rocks all the way, and then it's stationary again, another one builds up.
Oh, yes.
And then in that way, you can have successive ones where you don't have any ice at all today, but that proves that ice was once there.
Yes, and that would be an example now of such a thing as we see here.
Yes. those would be, that in fact is a terminal moraine on one of the Alpine glaciers, and it's, you see, a terminal moraine does not have to be down in the bottom of a trough.
Oh, I see.
It would be hanging on as this one does on the side of a mountain.
Well, now, you can have moraines that are along the side also, so if we were to, drop some these pebbles along here, we'd have the same action?
Well, yes, but then you have to imagine this is icy, and then the ice always pulls away a little bit from the side of the containing rocks. And when the rocks fall down, they're gathered right where the ice joins the rock, and then they're ground up and ground together and make scratches and powder and just disintegrate.
And that would be such a thing as we see here, this beautiful moraine on the side here.
Yeah, see on the left-hand side as we look at it, those are moraines that have been piled up very similar to the action of a bulldozer. Because a glacier doesn't just shrink all at once. It oscillates a little bit up and down and keeps pushing up like a bulldozer all the time.
Well, now, a glacier goes forward, it drops this moraine, this pile of rocks, it comes back, it could go forward and drop another one right on top of the old one.
In fact, that usually happens because we've had all kinds of oscillations even in the formation of the ice ages. Now, in this particular case, we're looking here at a terminal moraine on the Mendenhall Glacier. This moraine was caused by the first glacier there, let's say. And then the glacier moved back, and a huge forest grew up.
Oh, this looks like a pile of cannons.
Yes, because the stream that eroded that little trough there left them sticking out of the sides. Now, another picture that we'll have of a close-up here shows one of those particular stumps. They were called pre-glacial stumps when I first went up there, but I found that they were interglacial because the roots were ground around, meaning they were entwined around morainal rocks.
Yes.
So the moraine had to be there first. And then the top of that picture, you'll notice the shear action because the actual movement of ice is not fluid, but actually hexagonal crystal over hexagonal crystal.
Yes, well now,
that shears.
one thing, let's see, we have been speaking of glaciers receding. By that we don't necessarily mean that they have been moving backward. Actually, they are melting on the front end faster than they are being built up at the back end.
Yes, exactly, Earl. It's a case of where we can demonstrate that a little bit. You see, when evaporation exceeds precipitation, then although there's always a forward movement in the glacier, yet there is a shrinking backwards. Now, this is just a little piece of wax. We had to make it awfully thin, because that's the only way we could make it work. Now, I'm constantly pushing that forward, notice. Constantly going forward.
And as you go forward, then the same sort of thing that happens in a glacier.
It's still going forward, but as it meets this heat, notice my hand's getting closer, and it's melting, but it's always going forward.
Yes.
When movement ceases in a glacier, it's no longer a glacier.
One thing that I've been wondering about is how you can have enough heat in such places as the far north to melt these glaciers.
Well, Earl, it isn't so much a question of heat as a question of time. And actually, in the summertime, it does get reasonably hot up there.
Well, suppose we step over and look at these twin glaciers, because that's something that I was admiring a little bit earlier.
Normally, this time would be devoted to your second commercial. However, I would like to use it now to tell you just a bit about the California Academy of Sciences, the institution which produces Science in Action. The Academy is one of the oldest and most distinguished scientific organizations in the United States, and we're quite proud of that fact. The Academy is dedicated to scientific research and public education in science. Now, public education takes several forms. Here, Dr. Robert C. Miller, Academy Director and noted marine biologist, conducts a group of young people on an outing to study plant and animal life at the ocean's edge. Later, through Science in Action, they shared their experiences with thousands of others. The mysterious ways of a small crab or the magic of the distant planets may be equally fascinating. When it was found impossible to procure a planetarium projector from the Zeiss Company, our Academy staff proceeded to design the only major planetarium that has ever been completely constructed within the United States. Here we are on the roof of the planetarium building, but the instruments we see have nothing to do with the stars. As a service to the United States Weather Bureau, Academy staff members keep regular records of various phases of the weather. The Natural History and Science Museums in the Steinhardt Aquarium continue the public education program in still another way. For example, more than 1.5 million visitors come to Steinhardt Aquarium every year to view the reptiles, fish, and marine animals which have been gathered from every part of the world. Here is a very rare, cannibalistic South American horned frog. And of course, washing down the back of green and hawksbill turtles, and scrubbing the back as well, is quite important in preparing them for display. The long-established reputation of the Academy has earned us the cooperation of organizations in all fields of science. Here, a great hospital permitted us to film the administration of Mistogen, an unprecedented effort to keep alive a baby unable to breathe. Later, this became a part of one of the medical shows which form an important portion of any Science in Action series. Industry has been quite generous in sending us top scientists to tell the story of how science is applied to the products and services that we use every day. Now, this span extends from the comparatively new and dramatic synthetics industry to the old and still vitally important railroad business. Each series of Science in Action is balanced to include subjects appealing to every taste. The film that you are viewing covers only one topic in one field. The broad overall scope of the entire program appeals to all interests in science and to all ages. Incidentally, there is one thing I'd like to mention, and that is the fact that the Animal of the Week feature provides an excellent bridge for the middle commercial.